Hello, welcome to the channel.
How to manage money the right way. I have always believed that money is a tool, nothing more, nothing less. It is neither a god to be worshipped nor a demon to be feared. It is not the measure of your worth as a man or woman. It is simply a servant. And like any servant, it must be directed with discipline, foresight, and a clear purpose. If you do not manage money, money will manage you. And that, I assure you, is a far worse fate. When I started out in life, I did not have much of it. My father's farm gave me an honest upbringing, but there were no piles of gold sitting in the barn. I learned early that every coin has to be earned, and every coin can be wasted if you're careless. Later, as I began building my business, I understood something else. The way you treat your first $100 will determine how you treat your first million. Most people think managing money begins when you have a lot of it. This is a dangerous illusion. Managing money begins when you have almost none. It begins when you make decisions about whether to buy something you do not truly need, whether to invest in something that will grow, or whether to keep your resources idle while opportunity passes you by. Let me give you a principle I have lived by. Never spend $1 before you have earned it. That may sound obvious, but in my time, as in yours, there are countless people living far beyond their means. They buy on credit, not because they are building something valuable, but because they want to appear wealthier than they are. They buy the new suit, the new car, the new piece of furniture, not for its utility, but for the image it projects. I have seen many bright, capable men ruin themselves this way. Debt, when used foolishly, is a chain around your neck. Of course, debt can be a tool if it is used to build something that generates more than it costs, but that is a dangerous road for the undisciplined. I have taken loans before, but never for comfort, always for production, always for growth. If a man borrows to buy a machine that will make him twice the amount needed to repay the debt, then he is using debt wisely. If he borrows to buy a fancier chair for his office, then he is a fool. Another principle I hold close: money kept idle will shrink. Money put to work will grow. You must make your money serve you, not just sit in a drawer. Money that sits still loses value because the world moves forward and the cost of living moves with it. This is why I have always reinvested in my business, improving machinery, building better factories, paying better wages to keep the best workers. These were not acts of generosity alone. They were investments that returned many times their cost. But let me also warn you about the other extreme. There are men who are so eager to make their money work that they throw it into every wild scheme that crosses their desk. They invest in things they do not understand simply because someone promised them a high return. In my life, I have seen fortunes lost faster than they were made simply because the owner of the fortune forgot to ask the simplest question: do I understand this business well enough to trust it with my money? I will not invest in something I do not understand. I will not gamble on promises. I will study the matter until I can explain it to another man in simple words. If I cannot, I will walk away. And I have walked away from many so-called golden opportunities that later bankrupted those who chased them. Managing money also means managing yourself. Greed, impatience, vanity. These are the enemies of sound finance. When you let emotions guide your financial decisions, you are already halfway to failure. I have always believed that money should be handled with the same calm and steady judgment you would use in repairing an engine. You do not rush. You do not strike at random. You understand the mechanism before you touch it. There is also the matter of reserves. A business, like a man, must have savings. Too many people live on the edge. Their income matches their expenses exactly, and one small misfortune sends them into crisis. In my company, I always kept enough in reserve to withstand the storms. The economy will not always be in your favor. Orders will slow. Costs will rise. A wise man prepares for the lean years while still in the fat ones. Some people say to me, "But Henry, what if I save too much and never enjoy my money?" My answer is simple. Enjoyment does not have to mean extravagance. I have never lived lavishly. I find joy in the work itself, in the machines, in the growth of the enterprise, in the knowledge that I am building something that will outlast me. Money spent on pleasure is not wrong, but it must come from surplus, not from the seed you need to plant your future. Finally, I want to speak about purpose. Money without purpose is dangerous. A pile of gold with no plan attached to it will be spent on whims. But when your money has a mission, to build, to create, to improve, then every dollar becomes a soldier in your army. It goes out into the world to work for you, and it comes back with reinforcements. That is the right way to manage money. Not as a pile to hoard, not as a river to spend recklessly, but as a flowing stream that you direct toward growth, stability, and contribution. You can fill your head with philosophy all day long, but if it does not guide your actions, it is worth as much as a rusty wrench on a factory floor. A tool unused is no better than no tool at all. So I will now lay out the rules I have lived by when it comes to handling money. These are not theories. They are methods tested in the shop, in the market, and in the storms of life. 1. Know your income and expenses as you know the parts of an engine. A good mechanic can take apart an engine with his eyes closed because he knows each part by heart. You must know your finances in the same way. Too many people have only a vague idea of what they earn and spend. They think they know, but when the numbers are written down, the truth shocks them. When I was starting the Ford Motor Company, I knew exactly what every part cost, what every worker was paid, and what every sale brought in. I did not guess. I recorded it. You must do the same for your own life. Write it down. See it in black and white. Only then can you make sound decisions. 2. Separate wants from needs. This is simple, yet it will save you from ruin. Needs are things without which you cannot work or live decently. Food, shelter, clothing, tools for your trade. Wants are things that may be pleasant, but will not stop your progress if you go without them. The problem is that people confuse the two, and in the modern world, merchants work hard to blur the line. I have seen men buy expensive cars before they had steady work. I have seen households filled with fine furniture while debts piled higher each month. In my own life, I delayed many comforts so that I could keep investing in the machines and buildings that would secure my future. Every dollar spent on a want before a need is secured is a dollar stolen from your own tomorrow. 3. Make your money earn while you sleep. This is one of the most powerful lessons I can give you. A man who works only with his hands has limits. There are only so many hours in a day. But a man who puts his money to work has no such limits. The right investment keeps working through the night, through the weekends, through the years. For me, this meant building factories that could produce even when I was away, hiring skilled men who could keep operations running, and developing processes that multiplied output without multiplying costs. For you, it might mean investing in a trade, in real estate, in a business, or even in education that increases your future earnings. But mark my words, never invest in something you cannot explain in simple terms. If you cannot explain how it makes money, it will take your money. 4. Guard against the two great leaks, waste and pride. Waste is easy to see. Money thrown away on unnecessary things, or lost through poor maintenance, neglect, and disorganization. Pride is harder to recognize. Pride is buying something because you want others to admire you for it. Pride is upgrading perfectly good equipment just because a newer model came out. In the early years, I drove a plain car of my own make, even though I could have afforded a dozen fine automobiles. Why? Because my money was better used building the business, not feeding my vanity. Many men have gone broke feeding their pride. 5. Build reserves before expanding. Every business and every household faces risk. If you expand without reserves, you are like a ship sailing without lifeboats. One storm, and you are sunk. Before I opened new plants or launched new models, I made sure we had the means to survive a year of poor sales. In your life, this means keeping enough saved to handle illness, job loss, or other hardships. 6. Reinvest in what works. When you find something that makes a steady return, put more money into it. Many men make the mistake of pulling their profits out too quickly, spending them on luxuries instead of doubling down on what is already working. My great success with the Model T did not come from taking profits out and celebrating. It came from putting those profits back into improving production, which lowered costs, which increased sales, which made more profits, which I reinvested again. 7. Keep learning about money. The world changes. What worked yesterday may not work tomorrow, but principles remain the same, and you must keep learning how to apply them to the changing times. I never stopped studying machinery, markets, and methods. I learned from failures, both my own and others. If you stop learning, you stop earning. Money management is not a trick or a secret. It is a matter of discipline, foresight, and humility. The man who controls his money controls his destiny. The man who lets his money control him is no more than a servant in fine clothes. And I will tell you this: the habits you build when your income is small will be the habits that shape your fortune when it is large. If you waste a dime, you will waste a dollar. If you guard a dime, you will guard a fortune. People sometimes think that my success came from one big invention or a single lucky break. That is not so. My fortune was built slowly, step by step, with hundreds of small decisions about money, many of which seemed insignificant at the time. But over the years, those small decisions shaped the course of my life and my company. Let me share a few of those moments with you. The engine that taught me discipline. When I was a young mechanic, I wanted to build my own gasoline engine. I had no investors, no company, no safety net. Every dollar I earned from repairing watches, steam engines, or farm equipment had to go into parts. I could have spent that money on comfort, on a better suit, a newer bicycle, or nights out with friends. But I told myself, Henry, every coin you spend on pleasure now will delay your dream. It took months of careful saving, but I bought the materials piece by piece. Sometimes I would hold a new gear in my hands and feel proud, because I knew it represented hours of honest work. That discipline, the ability to direct my money toward a goal instead of my impulses, was the foundation of everything I built later. The first shop and the temptation of decoration. When I first opened a small workshop in Detroit, I had a choice. I could spend my limited funds making the place look impressive, or I could put nearly every dollar into tools, machines, and materials. A friend advised me to make it look respectable so customers will take you seriously. But I asked myself, do I want customers to admire my furniture or my work? I chose bare floors, plain benches, and good tools. That decision meant we could take on more jobs and do them faster. The shop didn't look like much from the outside, but those who cared about results came back again and again. Later, when the business grew strong, we could afford both quality and appearance, but never before the work itself was secured. The Model T and the power of reinvestment. The Model T was not just a success in engineering, it was a lesson in money management. When sales began to grow, I could have taken those profits for myself. Many businessmen in my time would have done exactly that, bought mansions, hosted grand parties, and filled their lives with luxuries. Instead, I reinvested in the production line. I bought better machinery, hired more workers, and improved their wages. This allowed us to build cars faster and cheaper, which brought in even more customers. That reinvestment cycle turned a successful car into a revolution in transportation. The lesson here is simple. When you find something that works, feed it. Don't drain it. The year of the slow sales. In the early years, there was a time when sales slowed sharply. Competitors launched flashy new models, and customers were curious. Many companies cut prices recklessly or borrowed heavily to push new designs to market. I chose another path. We had kept reserves, enough to keep the company stable without desperate measures. We used that time to refine our processes and improve the car instead of chasing fads. When the market stabilized, we were stronger than before, and our competitors who had gambled recklessly were gone. This taught me another truth. The time to prepare for a storm is when the sky is clear. The offer I refused once, a wealthy investor offered to put a large sum into my company in exchange for a share of control. At first glance, it looked like free money, a way to expand faster without risk. But I asked myself two questions. Do I truly need this money now? Will this money cost me more in the long run than it gives me now? The answer was clear. Accepting the investment would have meant surrendering part of my independence, which was worth more than gold. I turned it down. We grew slower, but we grew on our own terms. Money will always present you with choices that test your character. Do you spend on appearance or substance? Do you seek quick gains or build slow stability? Do you keep control or trade it away for cash? I have learned that the right choice is almost always the one that requires patience and discipline. I have seen bright men with good prospects end up penniless. I have seen businesses with fine products collapse in a single season. And in nearly every case, the cause was not bad luck alone. It was bad money management. The traps are always there, waiting for the careless, the impatient, and the proud. Let me name the worst of them so you can recognize them when they appear in your own path. Mistake 1. Spending future money today. This is the most common and the most deadly. A man spends what he has not yet earned, believing the future will provide. He signs his name to a debt as if that signature alone can guarantee the future. I have seen farmers mortgage their land for machinery they could not yet afford, only to lose both the machine and the farm when prices fell. I have seen young men drown themselves in personal debt for the sake of clothing, jewelry, and entertainments. Rule: if you borrow, borrow only for something that produces more than it costs. Never for comfort, never for show, never for impulse. Mistake 2. Chasing every golden opportunity. There is no shortage of men willing to sell you a quick road to riches. They will promise high returns with no risk, guaranteed profits from new inventions, or inside knowledge of the market. I have learned this truth. The faster and easier the profit is promised, the more likely it is to vanish. Many years ago, a friend urged me to put money into a speculative land deal. "You'll double it in a year," he said. The land was in a place I had never visited, in a trade I did not understand. I refused. He invested. A year later, the land was worthless, and his savings were gone. Mistake 3. Confusing income with wealth. A man with a high salary may seem wealthy, but if he spends it all each month, he is no richer than a laborer living from paycheck to paycheck. True wealth is what you keep and grow, not what you spend. When I began making a good income, I did not increase my spending to match it. I kept my personal life simple and put my earnings to work in the business. That is how wealth grows, not by swelling your lifestyle, but by swelling your investments. Mistake 4. Ignoring the small leaks. A business can be ruined not just by one great loss, but by 1,000 small wastes. A household is the same. People overlook the daily expenses, the unnecessary subscriptions, the unused tools, the food thrown away, and yet these small leaks drain more wealth than they realize. When I ran my factories, I inspected not only the large machines, but also the smallest processes. If a worker had to take 3 steps where one would do, that was wasted time, and wasted time is wasted money. The same principle applies to your personal finances. Mistake 5. Letting pride decide your purchases. Pride is a silent thief. It whispers, "You deserve this," and "What will people think if you don't have it?" I have seen pride lead a man to buy a car he cannot afford, a house too large for his family, or clothes he wears only once. Such purchases are not made for utility. They are made for the applause of others. And applause, I can tell you, cannot pay a single bill. Mistake 6. Failing to prepare for hard times. Many people live as if prosperity will last forever. They think good wages, good markets, and good health are permanent. Then comes illness, a lost job, or a bad season, and they have nothing in reserve. A wise man builds his safety net while the sun is still shining. In my own life, I have always kept enough in reserves to run my company for a year without a single sale. That reserve is what allowed us to survive market downturns when others went under. Mistake 7. Trusting others to think for you. It is one thing to seek advice. It is another to hand over your judgment entirely. I have seen men give their money to others, friends, advisors, even family, to invest on their behalf with no understanding of where it was going. If you would not let a stranger drive your automobile without knowing his skill, why would you let someone drive your finances without knowing his integrity and knowledge? Trust must be earned. and even then, your own mind must be engaged. In my experience, avoiding these traps is not a matter of genius, it is a matter of discipline. You do not need to be the smartest man in the room. You only need to be the man who avoids the obvious mistakes while others fall into them. The truth is, fortune often comes to the cautious before it comes to the clever. People sometimes imagine that wealth building requires a large starting sum. They think they must first inherit a fortune, win a prize, or discover a miracle product. This is a false notion. I began with little more than a few tools, my hands, and a willingness to work. The principles that took me from a farm boy in Michigan to an industrialist can be applied by any man or woman, in any trade, in any time. Here is how I would advise you to begin, whether you have a small wage or a small business. Step 1. Establish a clear purpose for your money. Without a mission will wander, and wandering money is soon lost. Before you save a single coin, decide what it will work toward. Is it a business, a home, education, expansion of your trade? For me in my early days, the purpose was clear: to build my own gasoline engine, then my own automobile, then my own company. That purpose guided every financial decision I made. If a purchase did not serve the purpose, it was postponed or abandoned. Step 2. Track every dollar. You cannot improve what you do not measure. The man who knows exactly where his money goes each month is already ahead of 9 out of 10 others. When I began, I kept a simple notebook. Every income, every expense, even the smallest, went down in writing. This habit reveals patterns you might never notice otherwise. It shows you where waste hides. It gives you control. Step 3. Create a margin between income and expense. Wealth is not made from what you earn, but from what you keep. You must create a gap, a margin between your earnings and your spending. That margin is the seed from which all wealth grows. Even if you can only save a small portion at first, the habit matters more than the amount. Once the habit is in place, you can increase it as your income grows. Step 4. Protect the seed money. When you have a small sum saved, the temptation is to make it grow quickly. This is where many men lose their seed. They risk it all in untested schemes and start over from nothing. Treat your early savings as sacred. Keep them in the safest place you can until you find an investment that you understand thoroughly and that serves your purpose. Step 5. Invest in skills before assets. The best early investment you can make is in yourself, in learning a skill that increases your earning power. Machinery breaks, markets shift, but skill travels with you wherever you go. When I was young, I learned everything I could about engines, manufacturing, and mechanics. Those skills made me valuable in any workshop and later gave me the confidence to start my own. Step 6. Turn your money into workers. Once you have a reserve and a valuable skill, begin to put your money to work. In my case, that meant buying better tools, building better machines, and hiring capable workers. In yours, it may mean buying equipment, improving your workspace, or acquiring property that produces income. Every dollar you invest should return more than it costs. If it does not, it is not an investment. It is an expense disguised as one. Step 7. Reinvest profits. Instead of consuming them, the surest way to grow is to reinvest. Too many men pull their profits out at the first sign of success to reward themselves with luxuries. Resist that urge. The business, the investment, the income source must be fed until it is strong enough to stand without your constant labor. The Model T revolution did not happen because we made a good car once. It happened because we took the profits from each success and put them back into improving the process. Step 8. Guard against complacency. Once a man has a comfortable income, the temptation is to relax, to stop pushing forward. This is when fortune begins to slip away. The world is always changing. If you do not move ahead, you will be left behind. Even at the height of my success, I kept looking for ways to improve production, reduce costs, and expand markets. Wealth must be maintained with the same energy it took to earn it. Step 9. Build for others, not just yourself. A fortune that benefits only its owner is a fortune that will soon be forgotten. I built cars for the common man, not for the wealthy few. This decision not only served others, it secured my own success. When your work improves the lives of many, your income has a foundation stronger than gold. Step 10. Pass on the principles. The greatest inheritance you can leave is not money, but wisdom. If you teach your children, or your apprentices or your workers, the principles of earning, saving, and investing, they will be equipped to create their own fortune. Money given without understanding is often wasted. Knowledge given without money will create money in time. Wealth is not a mystery. It is the result of disciplined habits applied consistently over years. Start with purpose, build a margin, protect your seed, invest in yourself, put money to work, reinvest, and never stop learning. That is the road I took, and it is a road open to anyone willing to walk it. Let me tell you something I have learned after a lifetime of earning, losing, and earning again. Money itself is not the prize. Freedom is. What good is a pile of gold if you must spend every waking hour protecting it? What good is a fine home if you must beg your banker for permission to keep it? True wealth is the ability to live on your own terms, to rise in the morning and know that no man owns your time, no debt owns your labor, and no fear owns your mind. But that kind of independence does not fall into your lap. You build it brick by brick, coin by coin, habit by habit. I have rules I have lived by and would pass to any man or woman who wishes to stand on their own feet. Rule 1. Never let money be your master. I have seen men twist themselves into knots over the chase for more. They work in trades they hate. They partner with people they cannot trust. They sacrifice their health and their honor, all because they think a little more money will finally set them free. But they are already enslaved because their happiness is chained to a number. Money should serve you, not shackle you. If a decision makes you rich but steals your peace, it is a bad bargain. Rule 2. Own more than you owe. I built my business so that I would never be at the mercy of the banks. Debt has its uses, yes, but it also has teeth. If you owe more than you own, you do not control your own fate. You are a worker for your creditor, no matter what title you hold. I have slept soundly through market storms because I made sure my debts were smaller than my reserves. That is a kind of freedom no interest rate can buy. Rule 3. Keep your needs small and your ambitions large. There is a strange truth about wealth. The man who can live on little is harder to break than the man who requires much. If your happiness depends on costly habits, your fortune must always run just to keep up. My personal life has always been simpler than people expect. I did not need silk curtains to design a car, nor a palace to run a factory. What I needed was space to think, tools to work, and people I could trust. Keep your personal needs small, and you will find it far easier to aim high in your work. Rule 4. Let your money build machines, not monuments. A machine earns its keep. It works for you. A monument, whether it is a grand building or a glittering piece of jewelry, sits there looking fine but producing nothing. When I had money to spare, I put it into better assembly lines, stronger steel presses, and new designs. These machines paid me back many times over. The man who puts his fortune into monuments may look rich today, but tomorrow he will be selling them to pay his bills. Rule 5. Make your wealth useful to others. Some people believe money is more secure when kept hidden. I believe it is more secure when it is out in the world, building something others depend on. When you give people jobs, when you make products they can afford, when you create value for the many, you make your own position stronger. Selfish money is fragile. Shared money, money put to work for the benefit of others, grows roots that are hard to pull up. Rule 6. Teach what you know. I have no patience for the rich man who leaves his children a fortune without the wisdom to use it. That is like handing a powerful engine to someone who has never learned to drive. It will destroy them before it takes them far. If you have learned the discipline of earning, saving, and investing, pass it on. Teach it to your children, to your workers, to anyone who will listen. The world will not run out of money, but it is always short on wisdom. So if you ask me what financial independence is, I will tell you this. It is not having the most, It is needing the least while having enough to do what matters most to you. It is knowing that if the markets crash tomorrow, you could still feed your family, still work at your craft, still look any man in the eye without fear. Money is a fine servant, but a terrible master. Put it to work. Make it earn. Let it serve your purpose, and you will never be its prisoner. If you remember nothing else I have said, remember this. Money is not life. It is not happiness. It is not purpose. It is simply the oil that keeps the engine of your work running. Too many people make the mistake of chasing the oil and forgetting to build the engine. They think if they just had enough dollars, the rest of life would take care of itself. But I have seen men with great fortunes live in misery, and I have seen men with modest means live in contentment, because they understood what money was for and what it was not for. When I started out, I did not dream of being rich. I dreamed of building something useful, something lasting. Money came as a result, not as the aim. And I believe that is why it stayed. I have lived through good markets and bad, through expansions and depressions, and I have seen one truth stand taller than all the rest. The man who manages his money with discipline and purpose can survive anything. The man who does not will be broken by the first strong wind. So I say to you, whether you are a young mechanic just learning your trade, a shopkeeper counting the day's receipts, or a business owner with a payroll to meet, build your money habits now. Keep your needs small. Put your money to work. Invest in what you understand. Keep reserves for the storm. And above all, never let greed or fear make your decisions. And when you reach a place where your money works harder than you do not grow idle. Use that freedom to create, to teach, to improve the lives of others. For the only fortune worth having is one that leaves the world better than you found it. Wealth is not measured by what you can buy, but by what you can build, protect, and pass on. If your work is good, your word is trusted, and your money is managed with wisdom, then you are already richer than most kings. So take the wheel of your own financial life. Do not let others steer it for you. Drive it with purpose, with patience, with principle, and you will arrive where you wish to go, not by accident, but by design. That, my friends, is the right way to manage money.